What's the state of China-US relations after 1 year of the Trump presidency? And what are the challenges ahead for 2018? Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. In just a few days, Donald Trump will mark his first year in office since becoming president of the United States. He was sworn in on January 20th, 2017, and since then his domestic and foreign policies have gained international attention as he's pushed an America First agenda. Meanwhile, he has met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The China-US relationship has taken a number of twists and turns over the last year. We begin with this report from CGTN's Tang.
The year 2017 has been a roller coaster year for China and the U.S. under President Donald Trump. In January, the president-elect threatened to revisit the diplomatic ties with Taiwan to force Beijing to cede ground on alleged currency manipulation, saying everything is under negotiation, including one China. But he changed his tone in February during his first phone call with President Xi Jinping by backing one China policy. Then in March, before his first meeting with President Xi, Trump took a hard line on the U.S. trade deficit with China, but he backpedaled again when Chinese president visited the U.S. in April, saying they had great chemistry. In July, Trump said he was very disappointed with China after DPRK's missile test that China didn't do enough. 2 weeks later, Trump launched the U.S. probe to alleged unlawful trade practices of China. During his state visit in China in November, Trump softened his tone on trade disputes, but it took a hawkish turn in December, accusing China of eroding U.S. interests in its national security strategy by accusing China of pursuing policies of economic aggression to weaken U.S. If 2017 was any indication, many people say, the twists and turns in the diplomatic ties between the two countries will be anything but predictable in 2018. But despite Trump's incoherence on foreign policy issues, experts say all the tensions last year are not new, and there has been a mature mechanism between the two countries to cope with them in the new year. Tangbo, CGTN, Beijing.
We turn now to more reaction from China on the first year of the Trump presidency and how it has affected China-US relations. I sat down recently with former Chinese Ambassador Su Ge. He now serves as chair of the China National Committee for Pacific Economic Cooperation. Ambassador, thanks for joining us. The past year has been quite eventful for US-China relations. We have the crisis, the nuclear crisis on the Korean Peninsula, trade issues that are being discussed. What is your assessment of the current state of US-China relations?
Well, I like your question, your choice of words, the eventful year for US-China relations. Indeed, when the President Trump was during the campaign, and the people in China, the so-called American watchers, we did not know where, so to speak, the direction of the future US-China relations. But our feeling is that after President Trump went to the White House, and then the President Xi Jinping, at his invitation, visited Mar-a-Lago, and then they met at another function, and finally President Trump was invited to have his state visit to China. So US-China relations, in our opinion, and went through some ups and downs, but finally we had a soft landing. So US-China relations is one of the most important, or the most important relationships in the world. The reason why we say so is that the biggest two economies, members of the United Nations Security Council, so the relations, how the relationship is faring, not only concerns these two countries, but concerns the Asia-Pacific region and, in a sense, the world. But at the same time, it's one of the most complicated relationships in the world. We have so many problems and to work out. However, we do have very important convergence of national interests.
Well, as you say, a complicated relationship. President Trump continues with his America First policy, and he's labeled China a strategic competitor. And in fact, the Chinese news agency Xinhua says, quoting here, trade tensions between the two countries are flaring. What is the outlook for U.S.-China trade relations in the upcoming year?
Well, U.S.-China relations constitute so many aspects, and we have problems. Yet we need to have a holistic picture and see every sides of the relationship. Indeed, the most recently released National Security Strategy report labeled China and Russia as competitors for the United States, and also the report also used a phrase, an adjective, calling both countries revisionist powers, eroding American interests and so on. However, if you read through the document, and somewhere towards the end, you can see that the report also says that there is a necessity for the United States to have a cooperative relationship with both China and Russia. So we have to read between the lines and then have a holistic. So the picture is not all that rosy, however, it's not all that pessimistic. So if we compare U.S.-China relationship to a ocean-going ship, so trade and economic relationship is the weight or is the ballast, keeping the big, great ship in balance. So we need to have this balancing. However, we also have the superstructure of the ship. That is the statesman. They need to give guidance to this ship, where it's going. So in our opinion, President Xi Jinping said that this is a great relationship, complicated, yes. Yet cooperation seems to be the only correct way. I think that he and President Xi Jinping and President Trump, during their Mar-a-Lago meeting, and then the most recent state visit, they had a very good, I think they developed a very good personal relationship. And as regards to the direction of the bilateral relationship, they have reached some good consensus. For these two important countries, we need to have a general guidance.
But is China concerned that the United States might begin to adopt more protectionist policies, especially on trade?
That's true, because America First is the policy chosen by the White House. And when you see that the biggest economy, I mean the only superpower in the world, that's the United States. If you have America First policy, I don't think we have any objection, because it's your policy. Yet, if you want to want to raise the living standards or keeping the middle class, and then have more jobs, just imagine the biggest economy. You do not have good relations with the second biggest economy, then how can you fulfill, this general goal? Now, for us, we know that because we are the second largest economy, our foreign trade, international trade with the United States is so enormous, because it's last year alone it was $525 billion. With the United States, Chinese trade is as much as China's trade with the whole of Europe. So that enormous figure. So we understand that for our modernization program, so it's imperative for us and for researchers like us. It is up to us to feel that it's our duty to find the convergence of interests, so that the relationship would go well. Because China's economy, I think, it depends a lot on good relations with the United States. Vice versa. United States, the biggest economy, if you just run into a whole competition and the trade wars, the sanctions, I don't think there is any winner between the biggest two economies if there is a trade war.
Right, we've heard that before. There are no winners in a trade war. But I want to move now onto a big security issue, something that is of great concern to both China and the United States, and that is the nuclear program being conducted by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Can China and the United States work together to resolve this issue?
Well, that's an excellent question, because in we have this whole region, and we have lots of problems in the region, because the DPRK nuclear issue, that's one of the toughest issues facing both the United States and China. And you hear from the news lots of people who say that there are lots of contradictions between these two countries, between the United States and China. But in my personal opinion, I would say that there is a whole lot of a convergence of interest between the United States and China. Well, China's policy towards the peninsula, Korean peninsula, is such. Our policy is three-pronged. Number one, denuclearization of the peninsula. That is, the North Koreans, they have to give up their nuclear program whatsoever. And the second point is, for the good of the region, we need to have peace and stability in the region, because peace and stability are the prerequisites for economic development. Of course, economic development would also pave way for political stability. For the U.S., I doubt whether the people from the top would have any would think otherwise about the general objectives. Yet, there is a difference between the United States and China. China would say that, okay, we need to find peaceful way to solve this issue. But you hear your statesmen, because some people would say that, well, all options are on the table. But by all options, they mean military intervention, military option is also included. But we would tell our friends, well, when you decide to have a military solution to this, you better to have a second thought, because once you are in, you need to think how you can get it out. Because Seoul is so close to 38 parallel, the north side was saying that they have the capability to turn Seoul, I quote, into a sea of flames. I don't think they are really bragging about it. So as for this issue, it's a complicated issue. It's a combination of leftovers of both the hot and the cold wars. How are we going to do about it? I think the United States and China, we should think about our national interests. Peace and stability is the best policy. If we quote a line from Winston Churchill, it's better to jaw than war.
Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much.
We will be right back. You're watching The Heat. Stay with us.